Hi guys, it's Nicole. I'm here with Marcy here at Capital Title, located here off Muskie Road in 290. And today we bring to you some information regarding title services and why you need title services. And first we want to thank Marcy for participating in this on today. And so Marcy is the senior escrow officer here, and she is also the branch manager. And so what better information to get is to get it straight from the horse's mouth, I always say. So I do pride a lot in bringing you a lot of educational information to make sure that you understand how your transaction begins from beginning to ending. So I have a list of questions, and I'm going to go ahead and address them to Marcy.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. So the first question is, by what means does a title company usually get to connect with the consumer?
So basically what happens is at the beginning of a contract, title is originally opened by the real estate agents.
Okay.
Typically the listing agent is the one that drives it, depending on who's paying for the owner's policy.
Mm-hmm.
It is a negotiable item, so we do see both buyers agents and sellers agents that direct business to us. So from there, what would happen is we open title, we send out a receipt, and we also ask for some information pertaining to the buyer and the seller. Obviously, for buyer purposes, we need to know who their current mortgage company is, what good contact numbers we can obtain from them, what a good email address is going to be, so that if we need to email them anything throughout the process, we can do so.
Okay. All right. So just to go into one term that you used, and you said open title, which brings me to my next question. So what does the term open title really mean?
So basically, there's two different aspects of that. So you look at it from the contract aspect, where that means that we receipt in an earnest money contract, which means both buyers, sellers, and their agents are all in together on a contract, and they're going to request that title be opened.
Okay.
Then you have it from a mortgage company standpoint, because not only do we have to have the request from the realtors by way of contract, we have to also have a request from the mortgage company, which basically is our, yes, the lender has been given permission from the buyer to obtain the information pertaining to the property. So you have two different aspects of opening title. One is from the contract, and one is from a mortgage company standpoint to get basically the documents sent over from title to the mortgage company.
Okay, so obviously we know that you do this every day, just by how fast that you rattle it off. So let's go back to layman's terms.
Okay.
So I'm going to say again, if it's just you and me talking, so that I can understand, because I understand what you're saying, but to the audience, that would be a little fast for them. So open title. What does open title mean?
You're under contract.
Perfect. There we go. See, I'm always looking out for you guys. All right. So let's go to, what exactly is a title policy? Most people, they say, why do I really need a title? What really is that? So can you give us a description as to what really a title policy is?
So what we do is when we open title, we run the property search. And what that means is that we look at the property from the existing date and back. And
now,
so
when
we
you
look
say
at
existing date, give us a little feedback on existing date.
What happens when we open title? We have a department that actually will obtain information. And so there's a specific date that we have access from the courthouse that they have given us access to the documents.
Okay.
So, for instance, typically, if you have a warranty deed that's been filed at the courthouse,
okay,
there's a date on that warranty deed, but that doesn't necessarily mean the title company has access based on that date. So there's a time frame that we have to wait from the open contract to the time that we are able to obtain the information from our examination department.
Okay, so let's stop right there. I wasn't going to go there about warranty deed, but since you said it, the audience is going to want to know what exactly is a warranty deed in layman's terms.
Okay, so warranty deed is basically the document that the seller signs conveying the property to the new buyer. So that is the title transfer.
Yes, title transfer.
That's
okay.
Right.
All right. So next question is, why do I need title services? You know, what's the purpose of it? Why do I really need that?
Because when you go to purchase a piece of property, you want to make sure that there is no taxes owed,
right?
No back homeowners association dues. You want to make sure that if there's a current mortgage,
No liens.
mortgage is going to get paid off. And so those are primarily the three things when you go and open title, we're going to produce to you through a title commitment.
Okay.
So we're going to show you the history of the property.
Okay.
And if you're going to just go in and purchase a property, don't you want to know what the history is? Don't you want to know that you are buying that property free and clear?
Yeah.
So that there's not any other debt that could come back against the property, and or even making sure that the way that the title, whether it be warranty deed or other means, has been transferred properly.
Okay.
So most of the mortgage companies that do loans for buyers will require a policy. And the reason that is because a title policy not only ensures the borrower that they're buying a property through the mortgage company that it will be free and clear when they take possession, but also the mortgage company wants to know that they are giving a loan on a piece of property that is free and clear when they provide the loan to the buyer.
Do you get very many instances where you are doing their title search and you find there are some things on there that need to be rectified?
On a daily basis. So, and it's not just something, for example, we have one in place where we have an old mortgage that possibly has not been paid off, and we now have a seller who's trying to sell the property, and the old seller's debt is still showing on the property. And so something as simple as a release of lien not being recorded of record is a quick fix to that. But what if the mortgage itself never got paid?
So where does that put the person that's trying to buy the property? What position does that put them in?
It puts them in a bad position unless we can clear title.
Clear it up,
and so basically that's what we do. Not only do we facilitate the closing and transferring with the warranty deed, but we make sure that if there's anything involved that is coming up on the prior owners, that we clear that up. And so in this case, they not only had a mortgage, but they also had a previous homeowners association lien. And so we have to go back and deal with the title company that closed them on that previous transaction to get proof of what was actually done on that policy.
Okay.
And if for some reason we have to extend that into researching further, we then have to make sure that we clear that up
first.
Because that buyer, we will not allow that buyer to come in and sign without knowing that we can give clear title.
Okay.
And that's one of those things, even though they closed at another title company after that, it still has to be addressed.
It still has to be addressed.
So,
but you guys will not do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we can work with the other title company, but if not, then we have to go even further in regards to finding the previous seller, getting mortgage
Which
information.
will take a lot more time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's not a 30-day close scenario, unfortunately. So because that does take a little bit of time.
Okay, so for just as a caveat to that, so if you have a cash buyer and they're not, for some reason, as concerned about that because they want to go ahead and do their transaction, will you still issue any type of policy? Even though
so with cash transactions, for most of the title companies here, we will go under contract and we will open title. We will research the property. We will make sure that title is clear. But if they choose to not have a title policy, then typically we would not close that transaction.
Right.
Because what we do is issue title insurance guaranteeing them that the property is
clear.
Free and clear up to that point.
Okay.
So at that point, they would go through a real estate attorney to handle the transaction.
Okay. All right. So let's move on and go on to the seller side. Why does the seller, so you have the buyer and you have the seller, and both of them are going to require the services. So on the seller side, why does a seller need to utilize your services?
Well, typically, if their buyer is doing a mortgage, title is always required.
Okay.
And so from a seller's standpoint, unless they have a cash buyer and they elect to agree not to go through title, typically the sellers get brought into it because the mortgage company is going to require it.
Okay. All right. So how are costs determined for a title policy?
So the title policy is regulated by the Board of Insurance. And so basically what that means is that there is not even so much a formula. So a lot of people will say, well, it's 1% of the sales price.
Uh-huh.
And that's not really the case. It is a promulgated amount that is set forth by the Board of Insurance. And so, for instance, on a sales price of $100,000,
Okay.
the title policy is $875 for the owner's policy.
Okay.
Then, if they are going to have a mortgage in place, then there would be what's considered a simultaneous issue, which means not only does the buyer get one for the $875, but the mortgage company gets a policy as well.
Okay.
And when they do that, the policy for the mortgage is $100 because it's a simultaneous issue. So you're looking at $875 for the buyer, $100 for the mortgage policy, and then of course there's endorsements. So the endorsements are additional coverages. I always like to give the example when you have a vehicle and you have car insurance and you decide that you're going to add on towing and rental reimbursement.
Right.
So that's an additional endorsement that you add to your car policy.
Not required, but optional.
Not required, but optional. And for the most part, where the endorsements come into play is when you have a mortgage company and they want to have those endorsements added to their $100 mortgage policy.
Okay.
So on average, I would say on a sales price of $100,000, you're looking at $875 for the owner's policy and about $225, $250 on the mortgage policy.
Okay.
Which would include the endorsements.
Okay. Okay. So you're saying that it's not quite a percent.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
So is it based off of a dollar amount basically?
Right. And so what they do, they being the Board of Insurance, is they have set it forth that for the first $100,000, it's $875, and then every dollar after that, there is a formula that we calculate.
Okay.
So say it's $110,000, we would have the first $100,000 at $875,
Okay.
and then that $10,000, we would take $10,000 times 0.00554, and we would take that amount and add it to the $875.
Gotcha.
And that would be your owner's
That would
policy.
be your owner's policy. Okay. All right. So moving on from there. The next question is, are there any other associated fees required to utilize the services of a title company?
Yes, there are. So typically, as a title company, we are here to issue title insurance. But then we also have our escrow fee, which is basically what we charge as a branch to hold escrow.
Now, when you say escrow, tell us what escrow means. I know what it means, but let's let our audience.
Escrow is what the title company does. We are the party that holds the money. So earnest money is deposited with title. The lender's money is deposited by usually way of wire transfer. And then we are the party that is responsible to basically delegate all the dollar amounts out. So we disperse the payoff, we disperse the seller proceeds, the real estate agent's commissions, and any other additional fees that the mortgage company may have in regards to, say, an attorney fee or an appraisal fee and those kinds of things. So we are considered escrow. We hold all the money.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So next question is, what type of guarantees does a title policy actually provide me? You're telling me that I really need it, and you've told me why. So what kind of guarantee does it provide me? I think you touched a little bit on that. Could you kind of just go back to that just for a minute?
Absolutely. So title insurance basically is a guarantee to the buyer and to the mortgage company that everything is free and clear at the time that they take possession or provide the loan. And so if for some reason something were to come back on that property, for instance, that HOA lien that I was referring to for an example, if we did not take care of that, then that buyer would have the right to file a claim on their policy that we provided to them because there's a cloud on title. And so in order to give them clear title insurance, I have to make sure everything is free and clear.
Before you say there's a guarantee.
Exactly. So if something is missed, then it is on the title company because they have a policy in place.
Okay.
And things do happen. Taxes get missed. HOAs don't get paid. There's possibly a predecessor in title or an heir that comes back and says, well, I had an interest in that property. And so there's several different things that could come up that could potentially, show as a claim. And so for the buyer, that gives them that security blanket, that they've got somebody to fall back on. And even more so for their mortgage company, because the mortgage company providing this mortgage loan to the buyer wants to know that they are secure as well, so that if for some reason something came back on title, the mortgage company is covered as well.
So basically, long story short, the cost for all of this other further research and fixing is going to be absorbed by the title company or the mortgage company.
Correct.
Should anything
Correct.
ever happen.
Right.
Okay.
And so I want to tell you another thing in regards to a lot of people will see title insurance as an ongoing insurance policy, just like you have a homeowner's policy or a car policy.
Okay.
Title insurance is a little different. What we do is we insure from the date of sale and back. So we look at all the history of the property to the current close date, and that's what we insure. So we basically do all the work up front, and then they close, and then they get a policy issued for the work we've already done. So we do all the work, and then we get paid for the services rendered.
Right.
Whereas your car insurance and homeowners insurance is a consistent, continue to go moving forward. Ours is a moving backwards.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Thanks for clearing that up.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so we're almost done here. So I think we've already addressed, when you give the agent the earnest money and they bring it to the title company. Oh, well, if their transaction doesn't actually execute, a lot of people want to know, do I have to go back to my agent to get my money? I've given my agent $5,000 or $3,000. Can I just go to the title company and they cut me a check? How does that work? I mean, is it going to be hard for me to get the money back as a consumer?
So it just depends. You definitely do not rely on your agent to give you the funds back.
Okay.
Because you have to remember, when you go under contract, you make that earnest money check payable to your title company.
Right.
So then that is deposited in escrow with your title company. So if for some reason the contract falls through, there is a release of earnest money that has to be executed by all parties. So both buyer, seller, and their agents that represent each party have to acknowledge and direct us as the title company to release those funds accordingly. So that would all be with title. The agents do not hold the money.
Okay.
All right. The reason that you put money in escrow with your title company is to secure that the property can be taken off the market, and it also secures the buyer and the seller that the transaction is moving forward. So typically you deal with your title company on that, but we as a title company will require that release of earnest money to be signed by all parties.
So as a caveat to that, because I know someone wants to know this, what if the seller doesn't really want to give me my money back, although he has to? How long will you hold it before you give it back to me, even though the seller has not agreed?
So typically what happens is if we find out that there is a dispute, so for instance, good example, we get a release of earnest money from the buyer's agent that says give the $5,000 back to the buyer, and we get a release of earnest money from the seller's agent saying give the $5,000 to my seller. We clearly are not on the same page.
Right.
So basically what happens at that point is, as the title company, we will provide the releases to the other party that were provided by the buyer's agent and the seller's agent. And we would let everybody know that we're in dispute. So if a reasonable agreement has not been made, typically we will hold the earnest money for up to 4 weeks. As long as there's been communication. Between both parties and the title company. If after that point there is not an agreement that can be reached, then essentially the money can go to the state of Texas. At which point the title company is no longer held accountable for those funds, and both buyer and seller would have to retrieve those funds through the state.
All right. Okay, so how long does it normally take to issue a title policy?
Okay, so there's a two-part in regards to your transaction. When you open your contract, we're going to issue what's called a title commitment. That title commitment is going to give the history of the property. At that point, that is submitted to the mortgage company for closing purposes. Then after we have closed and we have funded, a title policy is issued within 30 days of closing. So there's a two-part transaction that we basically give to the mortgage companies and to the parties, which is the title commitment, which is our commitment to issuing title insurance.
But you normally issue them before 30 days.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Those are
that's
usually
just your-
issued between 5 and 7 days of
Yeah,
opening
but
contract.
you just let us know there is a possibility it could take longer.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So, lastly, but not least, but what would you tell the audience about title services? You know, what would you say to them? You know, what would you recommend? Would you recommend to always, when you're getting ready to do such a real estate transaction, would you recommend that you always get a title policy?
Well,
Whether one is required or
Yeah.
not, even if it's on a cash transaction, you know, what would you say?
Well, here's my thing. It is a very small amount
Okay.
in the grand scheme of things. In the industry, you know, for 20 years now, I've been doing this, and I've seen all kinds of crazy things come back on title.
I bet.
And so for me to say, you know, do it or not do it, absolutely do it, because it's a peace of mind. It's one of those things where if you're going to buy a piece of property for cash, you need to know what you're buying. You
Right.
don't want to have anything that comes back to jeopardize your investment, because it's your hard-earned money that you are putting down on that piece of property. And the last thing you want to do is find out that it's going to a tax sale because the seller didn't pay taxes. And something as simple as $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 worth of taxes, they can take your property away from you. So you've invested $100,000 plus, and for
At minimum, yeah.
right, and so for a couple $1,000s, you're going to lose your investment. So that's why you should do title insurance. It's very wise. It's a very minimal cost if you look at the grand scheme of things. You'd much rather have an $875 hit
Right.
at the time of closing and have that peace of mind. And to further say, what is your peace of mind value?
Right.
Can you put a value on that?
No, you cannot.
No, you
You
can't.
cannot. You
So,
absolutely cannot. So
It's one of those things where, you know, it's an investment, and if you're going to pay for something, you want to get your money's worth, and
Right.
you want to know what you're getting.
Right, absolutely.
So.
Okay, guys, well, there you have it. And so, again, this is Cypress Property Gal. And so, go to our website if you're continuing to shop at www.buyandsellhomecypress.com. You can reach me by text or simply just email me. My number is 832-917-3244. Talk to you later.